Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and today I got a review for you guys of the Benchmade Griptilian in the S30V steel and the black polymer handles. Although I figured I would start the video by just saying I don't use these black polymer scales anymore. For those of you who saw in my last video, I got custom scales on my Griptilian. These are just some simple scales I got off of Etsy. I will promote the Etsy shop that I got them from, the Napoli EDC. Feel free to go follow these guys on Instagram and support them. You know, this is a good product that I did enjoy. It was a very easy thing to put on. These handles were super simple. Everything fit fairly well. I think I had a little hiccup with this screw back here, but for the most part, everything was pretty well done. This is some smooth G10 scales as well. There's not really any texturing on the surface there, so that's really nice. And obviously, you got this really cool black and gray G Mascus. I really like the look of this. It also came with a bug out clip or a bailout clip, depending on which knife you're more familiar with, which I thought was kind of interesting and kind of makes sense because they drilled the holes differently on these scales than they do on the other stock scales. So it kind of needed to have a more stubbier pocket clip. But anyways, I'm kind of going on a rant here, a little bit of a tangent, but just figured I'd get this out of the way now. Yes, I do have new scales on this guy. I will talk about them a little bit in my review, but for the most part, I'll be primarily talking about the original grivory scales. Now, sorry, I'm getting a knife real fast, but what I do want to do is I want to give you guys a little bit of a size comparison because this knife has a very actually doable EDC size for me. So I want to show you guys here. This is the PM2. It's pretty short compared to the PM2. I mean, it's only coming in about maybe a 1/4 inch shorter, so really not bad. Then you have the Shaman. I feel like these two are very comparable. They both have really nice contoured handles, and they both have really useful, EDC blade shapes, so that is nice. I figure I'll keep the PM2 up for a second just so I can also show the Manix 2 and 15V that I just did a review on not but 2 weeks ago. I recommend going and checking that one out. I quite like it, if I do say so myself, but that might just be bias. Now, I'll do a couple of knives that kind of give me a Griptilian feel. You know, thick handles with a nice EDC blade shape. So there's that H&K Exemplar made by Hogue, and then another knife made by Hogue in the Doug Ritter RSK MK1G2 and the 20CV NJG10. You can clearly see a pretty identifiable similarity between these two. But that was kind of the whole purpose of it. But that's a whole can of worms that I don't know enough about to talk about. So we'll just act like I didn't bring that up. But there you guys go with those two. And then I guess just a couple of miscellaneous knives I got laying around. First, the JG10 and M4 940 Osborne. I think aside from the video I made on it, this guy hasn't really made a lot of appearances, but there you go. He is a little bit shorter. And then the AD 20.5 with the shark's foot blade shape and the S35VN. This guy is significantly shorter than both of these. Not significantly, but he's shorter, you know. He's kind of the squirt. And then, yeah, this guy's also a little bit shorter. So that Griptilian's coming in at a pretty decent size. Shorter than the PM2, but bigger than an 80, or bigger than an AD 20.5 and 940. And then finally, I'm just going to show this knife because it's probably the next review I'm going to do. And it's my most recent knife pickup, and I am happy about it. So here we go, the Microtech MSI. Yeah, I just bought this guy, and don't let the angle fool you. They might look similar in size, but let me just put this guy on top of this guy, and you can see it's not that close. And this MSI is a massive knife, and I am so excited to do a review on it. I'm trying to get the review out there before I get my new scales in. I just bought some carbon fiber scales for this guy, so really nice. But yeah, you guys can tell the Griptilian, it's a pretty not huge, not short, you know, good sized knife. So there's that. Now, with all of that ranting and mambo jumbo and whatever else out of the way, let's get into what I like and don't like about this knife and if I can recommend it for you guys. So right off the bat, this blade shape is incredible. I cannot tell you guys how much I love this blade shape. And you guys keep seeing me, and I'm really sorry about that. But I really like this blade shape a whole lot. It is a very attractive, yet very EDC practical in its shape and design. It is a hollow grind, so it's going to come to a really slicey edge. And overall, it's just a really great blade shape. It's probably the best part of this knife. So really awesome stuff. They also have one with a more sheep's foot looking blade with like what looks like a Spidey hole in it. And they used to actually make, I'll bring back that Doug Ritter RSK MK1 G2 from Hogue. There's a couple Benchmade Griptilians with this blade on it that Benchmade actually used to make. So I recommend going and seeing if you can find one of those, because those are actually really neat. But I do love this blade shape a whole lot, so I just had to comment on that first and foremost. I also do enjoy the steel being S30V. S30V is a steel that some people in the knife community, sorry, let me see if I can get it to focus up right there. But yeah, you guys can see S30V. It's a steel that some people are complaining about. A lot of people in the knife community are complaining about because obviously we're seeing it on a lot of different knife designs. But in all honesty, S30V is just a really balanced steel, really a useful steel as well, just a great EDC steel. I find that it's easy to sharpen. I'm kind of a novice sharpener, but I don't have that hard of a time with S30V and my Work Sharp Precision Adjust Sharpener. So I don't mind that. It is decently tough. I've never had any S30V I own chip on me, and I've put them through hell. And the stainlessness is a big thing too, especially for me. And the edge retention's pretty good. This is one of those edge retentions, or one of those edge retention steels that get compared to a lot of others. This is pretty much like a baseline steel that a lot of people will compare other steels to. So that's how you know you got a good steel, when you're being compared to other steels. So that's pretty great. I will say I also do really like the thumb studs. I know it's kind of a simple thing to like, but these are, I think, slightly bigger than the 940 thumb studs. I couldn't tell exactly, but in my eyes, it looks a little bigger. And weirdly, that helps to get that bigger blade out easier without it wearing on your thumb too much. Bigger thumb studs are always a little nicer on the thumb for me. So I really do like these thumb studs a whole lot. Not to mention they stand not too proud, but proud enough to really be easy to get to. So you can reverse flick it, you can regular flick it, you can do whatever. And it's very easy, so I do appreciate that. I will say, while we're on the subject of the blade, I do really like the Benchmade logo. This is something that I feel like I mention every time I review a Benchmade, but anything that has the Benchmade butterfly on it, if I whip it out in front of my, coworkers, colleagues, whatever, and they see the knife and they see the butterfly, they get kind of amazed by the butterfly. People really like that butterfly. I was surprised about it, but a lot of my coworkers aren't knife people, but anytime I'm carrying a Benchmade, they're like, oh, whip out the butterfly. It's great. It's funny. The butterfly is very aesthetic for a knife logo, so that is good. I love the jimping back here. In fact, I love the jimping all over this knife. It is very like subtle. It's not over the top, so it's not going to tear up your fingers, which I do like, but it is also extremely useful because it's just grippy enough to really keep your fingers locked in. There's also a little bit down here, and this is just subtle enough that it's actually really nice on the finger. I mean, I talked about this with the Mannix videos a week ago, but this jimping is very intentional and is actually very comfortable. There's no hot spots in terms of jimping on this knife whatsoever, so I appreciate that a whole lot. Now, moving down to the handles, I do love these G10 scales a whole lot. If you guys get a Griptilian, look into getting some G10 scales for it, or aluminum, or titanium, whatever you're into. Switch it up, enjoy the scales. Enjoy the knife handle experience, if that makes sense. This is a Griptilian. It's got grip in the name, and that's because the overall shape of the handle is meant to be comfortable. I mean, even the original scales were very contoured, even for polymer scales or whatever these are, grivory. They're very contoured and very, very intentionally comfortable, because obviously this is a knife that has grip in the name, so it's realistically supposed to be used day in and day out without having too much of an uncomfort when it comes to the handle. So I'm gonna tell you, if you're not a big fan of grivory, you should definitely look into getting some really cool aftermarket scales, because there's some good options out there for sure. And this just so happened to be one of them. I definitely got lucky on this. I definitely recommend doing more research on scales before you just buy them. I just saw these and thought they looked neat and decided to buy them. So there you go. But yeah, I guess I'll bring in the OG scale just while we're talking about the handle a little bit. I do like that they contoured the handles, the original handles. Regardless of my feelings on them being grivory, which I will talk about later, I do appreciate the fact that they at least heavily contoured, heavily rounded. You know, there's not a lot of hot spots on the general shape of the handle. So in all honesty, I really like that. And the cool thing they did with these G10 scales was basically made them nearly the exact dimension while cutting off, obviously, that backspacer bit that's on the original scales. So I do appreciate that. I like that these scales also made it flow through. I do appreciate that. This knife is not flow through, or these knife handles were not flow through, but they weren't bad either. You know, I can appreciate I guess integrated backspacer, but the barrel spacers on this one are really cool too. These standoffs are really neat, making it flow through. But yeah, I appreciate the big hardware. The hardware is, I believe, T8s on the body and a T10 on that pivot. So you're getting a good size for all this hardware, which you can appreciate. I love the axis lock. Obviously, it's a very fidgety, fun lock. It's easy to use, easy to disengage. You know, your grandma who has arthritis could do a Benchmade axis lock. You know, their tensions are on the softer side, especially when compared to some other companies. So it's really nice and easy to just open and close it. I will also say I've taken this knife apart multiple times, and the washers are massive. They're big washers, probably the biggest I've ever seen in a knife. And that actually aids in not only stability, but also making this knife crazy smooth. I'm trying to show it, but I'm kind of off camera, so I'm just going to lift you guys up real fast. But you can see here, oh, goodness me. It's very smooth. Mine's a little too tight right now. I just tightened it up a little bit before turning on the camera. Probably shouldn't have done that because it was the perfect smoothness, but the blade had a little play in it, so I wanted to fix it up. And apparently I maybe made the tension a little too much, but I'll fix that off camera. But trust me when I say this, these big washers, I don't know what the real science is behind it or the physics behind it, but those big washers and everything just really made this knife super smooth. And again, coupled with this nice smooth axis lock, it's honestly a really nice thing. I will say with these custom scales, this new pocket clip, I'm so glad I got the new pocket clip. This pocket clip is so much better than the other one. The other one's just their standard Benchmade clip. Let me see if I can grab it out of this little bag here. But it's the standard 940 clip. I think I complained about it in the 940 video too. I really don't like this standard Benchmade clip they use. Here it is. There it is. It's just kind of ugly. Doesn't do anything for me. It just has Benchmade written in kind of ugly letters on the clip, but this clip's nice. I like this one a whole lot. It's something that I think I complimented in the bailout video. I like the pocket clip, so there you go. And I think finally, all around, just to kind of cap the good stuff, overall, the feeling and shape of the knife is something that I will say is 100% an A plus for me. The shape really, even when it had the grivory scales, was really nice. Again, having those heavily contoured handles really meshed well with this neat looking blade. The overall design, it's not the most attractive thing ever, but for a user EDC knife, it looks really good. And all the I guess angles and all the rounding that they did on this knife, I mean, made it just incredible. Made it just an incredible knife. And this knife has some pretty high acclaim amongst the knife world. So if that tells you anything, you know, it's definitely an easy knife to like. So there you guys go. Now I'm going to get into what I don't like about the knife. And in all honesty, what I should do right now is put this over here and bring this out, right? This is the prime culprit of everything that I disliked about this knife. I'm taking a deep breath, okay? I don't want to go too hard here, but I'm going to. These scales were probably some of my least favorite handle scales I think I've ever gotten in my entire life, right? And I've owned a lot of knives. I've even owned a lot of cheap knives, but this scale, these handles are just so bad. They are so bad. They're loud. They're clanky. You guys can hear that every time you open the knife. It was this really loud think sound every single time, and it was because these things had so much reverberation off of them. It was so loud. This knife is so much more quiet now. It used to clank so loud against these cheap scales. Not to mention, these things are not the most attractive thing ever. I mean, these are, even when they come in different colors or whatever, they just don't have appeal to me. These handles just don't have appeal. This texturing, I mean, looks okay, but feels not great. I will say I hated that texturing so much. This jimping they put up here, down here, and right here, so awful. It is so unnecessarily aggressive and like sharp that it really puts hot spots on the hand. Not to mention this OG clip, had a bit of a hot spot going on with it. That's why pretty much the week I got this knife, I knew I was going to get new scales for it. It was because I just couldn't stand these. This was the one part of the Griptilian that I did not like. And that it just sucks. It just sucks. But I mean, hey, this opens up the window of trying and finding new scales to upgrade the knife. And I was really happy because this was one of my first, scale replacements I'd done. And then after this, I got new scales for my Hogue Deca. There we go. And I also got new scales for my Benchmade tagged out, and I got new scales for my 80 20.5, as most of you guys know. So this really opened up a lot of cool things that I could do now that I knew that I could buy better scales. And I would recommend 100% with the Griptilian, look for better scales. Those plastic scales, you could be okay with them. I know of people who own the Griptilian who are just okay with the grivory scales, but why? Why settle? Those handles are not good. Change your mind, okay? But anyways, another thing that I did want to comment on, obviously I mentioned the pocket clip, so I'm not going to go over that again, but I also did want to mention the price. The price has gone up extensively. Obviously, that's something I talk about with almost every Benchmade I've ever reviewed, but I remember the days where the Griptilian was $115, $120, right? I remember there was once a time where this was under $100. I saw a video the other day of a guy talking about when the Griptilian dropped, and he said that it dropped at like $90 some, $80 some, and it was in 154 cm and the grivory. Now, obviously, they've upgraded, and now it's S30V, but I feel like upgrading the steel to S30V and keeping the handles grivory does not necessarily make a high price tag okay. And I think $145, which is how much I paid for this, it's probably gone up since. I haven't looked, but I got this when it was $140, $150. That was outlandish in my mind. The grivory scales alone just woo. I was so upset because I was like, I genuinely thought this would be a good knife purchase. And although it is a great knife purchase, it was only made good after I bought the new scales. But that's an extra 50, 60 bucks on top of the 145 bucks. So the grivory scales sucked, and the blade steel was solid, but not enough to bump the price all the way to 150 bucks. That just wasn't okay. It's something that I had a huge gripe with when I first bought the knife. I've since come around to being like, okay, it's a good knife, so I mean, I'm not upset that I bought it, but I just bring the prices down. Benchmade, please. You're killing me. And this knife especially should have been one of those few exceptions in their lineup that should have stayed low, should have stayed in a low cost. I'm not saying 140, 150 is not a low cost, but I mean, when you can get knives in S30V and G10 base for $120, $130, why would you want to go with this when it has grivory? You wouldn't. And that's the big thing for me, is this knife is just such a hard sell now as opposed to where it used to be. It used to be the cheap Benchmade, the easy to get Benchmade. But now it's not anymore. And not a lot of people are going to bite the bullet on it. But that was a big rant that I have been waiting all day to give. But I will say this. Can I recommend it for you guys? Absolutely. It's a great knife. In fact, I think it's a knife that everybody should hold, experience at least once in their life. I've said it the very same about the 940, the Deca, the PM2, the Shaman. I've said it about all these great knives, and it's just the truth. You have to experience them. You don't necessarily have to buy them, but experiencing them is what is always important to do with stuff like this, especially something like the Griptilian that's had such a rich history since its introduction. This knife is a humongous fan favorite. And again, you can talk to any knife guy, and I guarantee if you bring up the Griptilian, they'll know the knife you're talking about. So, can I recommend it for you guys? Yes. Get new scales. Don't stick with the grivory. You're better than that, and the grivory sucks. That's subjective, but it's also a fact. But yeah, the only thing deterring, the price. It's the only thing. But if you can find this guy on sale, which I've seen them go on sale quite frequently, bite the bullet and go ahead and take it. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry this video was a big bunch of tirades. It's been a long day, a long week, but I'm just happy I'm able to bring you guys content today. Be looking out for the MSI review coming out probably next week sometime, possibly this weekend. I just recently purchased some scales for it, some carbon fiber scales, so I'm waiting for those to come in. And I also just recently bought a Kunwu knife, so I'll be very excited to bring that to the channel as well, hopefully in the next video I post. But thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and overall, thank you.